She didn't ask to be beautiful. She didn't beg for attention. But from the moment she stepped into campus, everything changed. Boys lost their minds. Girls became enemies. Lecturers stuttered. And rumors of jazz, charm, and curses followed her like a shadow. But behind the beauty was a hidden battle, a spiritual inheritance she never asked for. This is not just a love story. It's a story of deliverance, identity, and freedom from a generational yoke. What happens when your beauty becomes your burden? What if love could destroy or deliver you? Welcome to The Beauty Nobody Could Resist, a Nigerian spiritual romance like no other. Stay glued. You won't want to skip a second. When Deborah Uzoamako arrived at St. Dominic University, the world noticed. She didn't walk in like someone seeking attention. In fact, she said nothing. No dramatic poses, no loud laughs, no heavy makeup. Just a calm girl pulling a blue box across the school compound in the midday sun. But the moment she passed, everything paused. It was as though the air itself held its breath. The birds went quiet. A group of final-year boys, mid-conversation, forgot what they were saying. One of them tilted his head. "You see that?" he asked the others. "Saw what?" another whispered, afraid to look directly. Deborah's beauty was beyond human logic. She was tall and graceful, with skin the color of soft caramel. Her eyes, big, almond-shaped, seemed to glow like honey caught in sunlight. And her hair, thick and curly, flowed effortlessly in a bun that somehow looked royal even without a crown. She wore a simple white blouse tucked into a high-waisted Ankara skirt with deep red patterns. She walked like someone who had walked through storms and made peace with the thunder. Nobody had ever seen her before. But before the sun set that day, everyone on campus knew her name. Who be that fine girl? She resemble goddess, a beg. New student. She get jazz, I swear. Some people smiled at her. She smiled back. Others stared from afar, whispering. But Deborah kept moving, calm, confident, unaware that with each step she was rewriting the campus story. She entered the female hostel, room B17. A double bunk, one window, and two surprised roommates. "I'm Deborah," she said. "Transfer from UI." Her voice, soft as silk soaked in water. That night, her roommates couldn't sleep. They just kept glancing at her glowing skin and listening to her breath as if she might disappear by morning. She didn't. She was real. Too real. Within just 1 week, Deborah's name was everywhere, whispered in classrooms, debated in hostels, even gossiped about by lecturers. She hadn't done anything dramatic. She attended lectures, took notes, ate quietly in the cafeteria, never raised her voice, never flirted. She wasn't on Instagram. She didn't even use WhatsApp status like most girls. But the attention followed her like a shadow. The first boy to fall was Jide, the student union president, proud, sharp-tongued, and already in a serious relationship with Amaka, one of the most respected girls on campus. Jide spotted Deborah walking into the Faculty of Law building and felt his knees buckle. He leaned against the wall and whispered, "Who be that?" His friend, Kachi, laughed. "Chairman, fear God. Na new girl. Transfer. We hear say she from UI." That evening, Jide broke up with Amaka. Just like that. "Why?" she demanded, shocked and shaking. "I don't know anymore," he said quietly. Something in me shifted. Amaka was crushed. The whole campus felt it. But Jide couldn't explain. He wasn't thinking with his head anymore. Something had wrapped around his heart and it had Deborah's name on it. Next was Chuka. Chuka, the campus prayer warrior. The assistant chapel leader. A guy who never missed Wednesday fellowship or Friday night vigil. Until he saw Deborah during a tutorial. She didn't even speak to him. Just sat beside him on the third row, reading a biology textbook. But that night, he had a dream. In it, Deborah was standing by a river, calling his name. The next day, Chuka missed prayer meeting for the first time in 3 years. It was supposed to be a joke. Sly, the campus clown and a final-year fine art student, designed a poster out of boredom. Black Heart Deborah's Love Challenge 2025 Black Heart. Win a date with the goddess herself. Entry fee, write a poem, song, or short video. Prize, a smile, or more. He pasted it around campus, thinking people would laugh. They didn't. By noon, the Student Affairs Office had received over 70 creative entries. Poems, love letters, songs, art, even a rap battle titled Deborah for President. The madness had escalated. One boy, a 300-level music student named Femi, brought a guitar to her hostel gate and sang for 3 hours straight in the sun. Another, a painter, created a full portrait of her from memory after seeing her once. He presented it at the school art exhibition, calling it the River of Grace. But Deborah said nothing. She smiled politely, walked past the posters, never posted a reply, never mentioned the challenge. And that only made the boys go crazier. One even went to the school counselor and confessed he couldn't focus on his studies because Deborah's image haunted his mind like a ghost. While the boys lost themselves, the girls began to divide. Some admired her, calling her classy, composed, and inspiring. Others despised her. "She's using charm," one girl hissed in the cafeteria. "It's not natural to cause this much chaos with just one look." "She hasn't even joined any fellowship," another added. "We don't know her. She's too quiet. I don't trust her." The tension came to a boil one afternoon. Esther, a popular campus influencer with over 9,000 followers on IG, stood up in the cafeteria while Deborah was eating and shouted, "You think you're better than everyone else because you're fine, ABI? You don't greet anybody. You don't mingle. You dayform goddess. Well, this is Street Dominic, not Mount Olympus." Silence. Every eye turned to Deborah. She looked up, calmly wiped her lips with a tissue, and stood. "I didn't ask to be worshipped," she said. "You all did that on your own." Then she walked out. No shouting. No drama. But that line broke the internet. Everyone quoted it. Campus gossip blogs posted it with captions like, "The goddess has spoken. Deborah 1, Esther 0. And still, she remained silent. Alone. Watching. Waiting. Then came the breakdowns. Jide was caught trying to bribe a lecturer for a GPA boost after failing 2 papers. When the lecturer asked him why, he muttered, "I need to be worthy of her." Chuka was found trembling behind the chapel. His roommate said he had been fasting for 7 days, trying to resist the spirit in her. Sly punched a fellow student after discovering he wrote a poem for Deborah too. He was suspended, but none of them blamed her. They blamed themselves, because they couldn't stop looking, couldn't stop dreaming, couldn't stop needing her. But Deborah, alone in her room, was no longer calm. She had begun waking up with scratch marks on her arms, hearing voices at night, seeing shadows behind her when she turned to the mirror. And one night she opened a locked box her grandmother had left her before she died. Inside was a small mirror, an old diary, and a note. "Deborah, if you begin to feel their madness, run to the house of fire. There's a man there who can break the covenant you never made." Deborah dropped the box. Her hands trembled. She didn't understand it fully yet. But something had been planted in her bloodline. And now? It had begun to awaken. It was around 2:37 a.m. Deborah sat cross-legged on the floor of her hostel room, lit only by a candle. Her roommates were fast asleep. The entire building was quiet, but it felt like something in the air was watching. She opened the mirror box again. It had a strange shimmer like water rippling under moonlight. She remembered her grandmother's last words before she died. "Don't stare too long. Your reflection carries more than your face." But tonight, something compelled her. Slowly, she lifted the mirror and looked. At first, she saw only herself. Beautiful, tired, unsure. Then, the candle flickered, and her reflection smiled. But she didn't. Her breath caught. She blinked hard. Now the reflection frowned, and her eyes turned silver. Suddenly, an old voice filled the room, her grandmother's voice, deep and heavy. "You carry the seal of the river. You are the daughter of those who swayed kingdoms with a glance. Your beauty is not yours alone. It is marked, bound, meant to control or be controlled." Deborah dropped the mirror. It didn't break, but the words stayed. "Run to the house of fire." She didn't know what that meant. But that night, she dreamed of a place, a small church on the outskirts of Enugu with flames carved into the gate and a sign that read, "Mountain Fire Restoration Ministry." The next day, campus hosted its annual seminar, Destiny and the Future of Youth Leadership. The guest speaker? A man named Alex Mwankwo. He was young, in his late 20s, wearing white from head to toe. Calm. Mysterious. People whispered he had once studied at St. Dominic but left to pursue higher spiritual training. When he took the mic, the entire hall went quiet. "Some people don't choose their gifts," he began. "They are born with them. But if left untrained, those gifts become traps." Deborah froze in her seat. His voice sounded like the one from her dream. "There are young women in our world who carry light in their faces and fire in their blood, not because they are evil, but because their ancestors made a deal they never understood." His eyes swept the crowd, then paused, right on her. You can't fight what you haven't named. But if you surrender, freedom can still find you. After the session, Deborah slipped out through the back exit. But he was waiting. You're the mirror girl, he said softly. Her eyes widened. Who are you? The one your grandmother prayed would find you. Alex took her to the chapel garden and showed her an old journal, one written in the ancient Igbo script of the river priestesses. Inside were pages detailing her family line. Your great-grandmother was the last priestess of Izemio Ada. When she died, her power didn't vanish, it hid. Waiting. Your grandmother suppressed it through prayer. But now you carry it. Deborah couldn't breathe. So that's why people go mad around me? Why boys can't stop staring? Alex nodded. It's not just beauty. It's spiritual influence. A snare born of an ancient covenant. Unless it's broken, anyone who loves you without protection will lose themselves. So I'm cursed. No. You're bound. And there's only one way out: deliverance. What if I don't want to serve anything? Then you must break the seal. She stared at him. Can you do it? He looked down. No. But I know someone who can. He handed her a card. It had the name. Pastor David Ikena, Mountain Fire Restoration Ministry, where bloodline battles are buried. Deborah took the card and held it close. For the first time, she had hope. She went on a Sunday night. The church was small but blazing with prayer. She stood at the entrance, unsure, until a woman in white walked up and smiled. You are the girl the river follows, the woman said. We've been waiting. Inside, the choir was singing. Any covenant not made by God, let Holy Ghost fire scatter it. Deborah dropped to her knees. The moment the worship intensified, she began to tremble. Her vision blurred. She saw her reflection in the altar glass, smiling at her again. Suddenly, Pastor David stepped down from the altar and pointed. You, daughter of Uzoamako, come forth. She rose. Tears streamed down her face. She didn't even understand how he knew her name. There is a seal in your blood, he declared. It's ancient, seductive, and generational. But by the blood of Jesus, that altar must scatter tonight. She began to shake violently. Voices screamed from inside her. Faces of all the men she had unintentionally harmed flashed before her eyes. Then darkness, then fire, then light. Power, Pastor David shouted. Break, Deborah screamed. Then silence. Her body hit the floor, but her spirit was finally free. The next morning, the sun rose softer than usual. Deborah stood in front of her mirror. For the first time since childhood, her reflection smiled only when she did. Her body was still the same. Her beauty hadn't vanished. But the strange attraction? Gone. Boys now admired her respectfully, not obsessively. Girls no longer hated her. They smiled at her in the hallway. Peace followed her like perfume. Even Chuka, once shaking in prayer, walked up to her and said, I feel peace now. Thank you. Sly apologized. Jide returned to Amaka. Everything began to heal. And for the first time, Deborah felt human again. Whole. And waiting. Life slowly settled back into normal. Deborah began volunteering at the university counseling unit. She had lived what most students were too scared to admit. The feeling of being trapped by something you didn't ask for. One afternoon, while filing student forms, a voice called from the door. I was told the lady with fire in her past now serves others with peace. She turned. It was Alex. He wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled, collar relaxed, Bible tucked under one arm, and a soft smile on his lips. She hadn't seen him since the night of her deliverance. I thought you disappeared, she said softly. You needed time, he replied. And I needed healing too. They walked together down the garden path behind the chapel. No pressure. No rush. Just two souls finally at peace. I never told you the full truth, he said. When I was younger, your grandmother helped me fight a spirit of lust that nearly destroyed me. I promised her I'd protect you. But I wasn't ready then. Now I am. Deborah looked at him, his honesty, his calm. He hadn't chased her like the others. He had stood beside her, guided her to freedom. So what happens now? She asked. Whatever God says. And in that moment, something gentle sparked between them. Not obsession, not madness, but love. Real love. The news of Deborah's transformation spread quickly. Rumors died. The mockery turned to admiration. Even Esther, who once embarrassed her in public, approached her with tears in her eyes. I judged you because I didn't understand your strength, Esther confessed. You don't know how many girls your story has saved. Deborah smiled and hugged her. "It wasn't my strength," she said. "It was grace." She began leading a small group for girls on campus called Mirror Sisters, where they talked about confidence, emotional purity, and spiritual identity. Lecturers invited her to speak. Fellowships begged her to share her testimony. But Deborah never made it about her beauty again. She made it about the God who freed her from it. It was graduation season. Everyone was celebrating with gowns, rice, suya, and family members. Deborah had earned her degree in psychology with distinction. At the final chapel Thanksgiving, students gathered to sing, dance, and give testimonies. When Pastor David took the mic, he smiled. "There's someone here whose story proves that curses don't have to continue, and beauty doesn't have to bind." He called Deborah up to testify. The entire congregation gave her a standing ovation. But as she finished her speech and turned to sit down, Alex stepped forward. He didn't speak immediately. He simply knelt. The entire hall gasped. He took her hand gently, his voice steady. "I've seen you at your highest, and I've stood near you at your lowest. I don't want to possess you. I want to protect you. Not because of your beauty, but because of your heart. Deborah Uzoamako, will you marry me?" The crowd held their breath. Tears spilled down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." They married in a small white church, surrounded by family, friends, classmates, and most importantly, peace. Deborah wore a simple lace gown. No makeup, no jewelry, just herself, radiant and free. Alex waited at the altar, smiling. As she walked in, her steps slow, her heart steady, people whispered, "She used to be the girl that broke hearts, but now she's the woman that heals them." Pastor David blessed the union with tears in his eyes. "This marriage is a symbol," he said, "that when God delivers you, he doesn't just stop the storm, he builds a home after it." And when Alex kissed her under the white arch of roses, the wind blew again, but this time it wasn't to stare. It was to celebrate. Years later, Deborah stood in front of a packed youth conference hall in Lagos, holding a microphone. She was no longer just a woman once bound by beauty. She was now a mother, a counselor, and co-pastor beside her husband, Alex. Her topic, freedom from what you didn't ask for. "I used to cry over a mirror," she said, "but now I use it to remind my daughters that they are more than what people see. You don't have to serve what your ancestors bowed to. You don't have to carry what they carried. God breaks yokes." The crowd applauded. In the front row sat her husband, smiling. Beside him, a little girl with big honey eyes and caramel skin. Their daughter Zoe. The same face once used to cause madness, now teaching the world about grace, identity, and freedom. Because beauty was never the curse. Bondage was, and now the chains were broken. And so, the girl once feared for her beauty became a woman celebrated for her grace. No longer chained to a curse she didn't cause. No longer misunderstood or isolated. She found peace. She found purpose. She found love. And most importantly, she found freedom. Because in the end, it was never about beauty. It was about the battle behind it. Moral lessons. You are not what happened to your bloodline. Every chain can be broken. Every curse can be reversed through the power of God. Beauty is not a curse, bondage is. When we understand our identity in Christ, what once trapped us can become a testimony. Your story can set others free. Like Deborah, your pain can become someone else's healing if you allow God to rewrite it. True love doesn't possess, it protects. Alex didn't chase her beauty. He walked her to her healing. That's love. Deliverance is real and necessary. Some battles are spiritual. Until we confront them, we may keep repeating cycles we don't understand. Thank you for watching The Beauty Nobody Could Resist. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. God can rewrite any story, even yours.